Welcome to the Fit for Success podcast. Brian Semling is an experienced entrepreneur with over 25 years in business. He is the founder and CEO of Blitz Innovation. He has built several brands such as Brian's Toys, a collectible toy business, to several Amazon FBA brands like Strictly Bricks and Clever Creations. His latest adventure is Rovux, a modern athleisure footwear brand which can be found at rovuxfootwear.com. On the podcast, Brian will talk with other entrepreneurs and social media influencers about their entrepreneurial journey, from what it takes to start and run a business to how they may continue to grow their brands and where they see themselves in their businesses in the future. And now, here's your host, Brian Semling.
Welcome to the Fit for Success podcast. I'm Brian Semling. My guest today is Jason Portnoy, the founder of JPORT Media. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. So, Jason, tell me a little bit about yourself, your business, and how you got started.
All right, I'll make this quick as to not bore your listeners, but went to university, tried to do the traditional route, had two parents who tried to force me to become a professional. That was the way to make money and stability, is become a professional. Thought I wanted to go to law school because lawyers looked cool on TV, until most of the lawyers I knew looked nothing like TV. Got accepted to law school and then realized that I have to do 4 more years. So I declined it, which made my parents pretty upset. Who declines law school? And then they said, what are you going to do with your life? I said, I don't know. I'll go get a job and figure it out. And took my first job doing recruiting. Really got the entrepreneurial bug and realized every problem I had with school, went into the job I took. I had problems with authority. I didn't like to have to ask where to go, when to go. I just wanted to do my own thing. So saw my boss and how they were doing things, and I saw how the employees were doing things, and I saw my paycheck. I'm like, this really isn't the right avenue for me. And I left and I started a t-shirt company, which I spent a lot of money failing at in the early days, and realizing that entrepreneurship is pretty hard. Starting a business is hard, and maybe being an employee is the right way to go. But I'm wired very differently, and I realized I took a step back, realized I couldn't do it, and I tried one more time. Lucky enough, this time I was mentored by Daymond John from Shark Tank, and who's a good friend today. Realized a lot of the mistakes I made early, fixed it all, launched a clothing brand, sold in over 250 stores across North America. And from there, I had my own problems, right? My first business, first problems, realizing that I think I could do everything myself, and that I know better than everyone, and I could do it faster, better than anyone else I could possibly offload this to. Got burnt out. I think it's called burnt out, but I think it was just me not doing my job properly. And, started spending a lot of my time dealing with other companies who saw how I built the brand on the back of social media, on the back of influencers, on the back of all the of early days of Facebook advertising. And I would do a lot of free lunches, sitting down with them, giving them ideas on how they could go build their brand, until I realized, hey, I should maybe charge for this because I love it. And I took on my first client. They went from $2,500 a month in sales to $300,000 in under a year, profitably.
That's amazing. Kind of 100x, by the way, right? So
yeah, that became a lighthouse. I often joke around, what if my first client was a giant failure and we lost them all their money? Where would I be? Would I still have this agency? Would I still have the passion to help people? But it worked. And then it worked well for the second brand we took on as well. And my wife, being a very supportive person, newly married, says to me, you're miserable when you talk about the clothing brand. You're super happy you talk marketing, figure this out, just do what you need to do. Walked away from the clothing brand, started the agency. And I've been doing that for around 4 years now. Started the agency. Through that, met a lot of interesting people, spoken on a lot of different stages around the world, launched a podcast called Perfectly Mentored, where I've had some of the biggest guests in the world on there, from Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, Rebecca Minkoff, Randi Zuckerberg, a lot of the top people, Harley Finkelstein from Shopify, a lot of the top guests. And I started realizing that through the agency and through speaking to a lot of these people, there's some sort of pattern in order to have success. And there's some levers that you can pull inside your business. So I then launched a growth consultancy program where I now teach those key levers and those growth systems and optimizations in order to grow your business. So right now, my day is the podcast, which is a fun little hobby. And then And then I run an agency where we help scale businesses past 7 figures. And I had the growth consultancy program called the Market Domination Method.
That's a really neat background and story, and kind of, so thanks for sharing. You've kind of already answered some questions that I would have asked about how you got, how you decided to become an entrepreneur. And it was, you weren't, I don't know if it's fair to say you weren't a good employee, but you didn't like being an employee.
I was a bad employee too. Let's be fair, right?
Let's put that out there as well.
But I was also a punk kid, my first job. And I look back and I make a lot of comments back then being like, I look at my bosses and I looked at my paycheck and, there was a problem there. I was a punk kid who thought like the world owed me something. I got a job. Here's how you're supposed to make money. And look at me. I'm good at what I do. Just pay me and I can do what I want. And I was spoiled and I was a little kid when I look back at it.
So fortunately it did work out. It seems like there was an interesting, as you described the original initial failure, then success with the clothing brand, but really what you found was that you liked helping others more than, actually running your own brand. And I think the marketing kind of stands out basically. And I, being in business and a number of different businesses and brands, I kind of have an appreciation for what you described. So it sounds like you kind of focused in on, instead of having to focus or think about everything from, let's say, logistics and sourcing and, et cetera, to be able to focus really on marketing and in this case, not necessarily your own marketing, but helping others market their brands, really was like a switch that went off where you were already successful, but you didn't really love it necessarily, or maybe you did, but you got tired out of it. Right. And you transitioned to what you're doing now, where it really, when you could dial in on that part of the business that maybe you're just, geared for, the marketing and helping others. So maybe just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, no, look, you're a business owner. You understand this. Everyone talks about passion and love what you do. But if you're in business long enough, there are days where you really don't like what you do. And, there are some days you just don't want to get out of bed and do what you need to do. So I think the idea of you have to love what you do every single day, I don't buy into that as much anymore. And I used to say, look, I fell out of love with it and I believe in doing what you need to do. I wrote a long blog post about this when I left the business and walked away from it, saying, you got to follow your heart. You got to do what you need to do. I think that was a very romantic way of putting it. When I look back now that I've had, 5 years away from it, I could kind of reflect a little bit more, and I have that maturity and, some more business experience under me and some lessons I learned. I think it's a matter of, yes, I didn't like what I did, but I made a lot of mistakes in how I handled it. Right. There are reasons why I fell out of love with what I was doing. I was also very nervous where retail was going. And I was predominantly heavy on retail at the side in retail stores. And I was worried about that. And that lack of passion that I had at that moment wasn't strong enough for me to make that pivot and bring everything online myself.
Yeah.
Could I have done it? Maybe. Could I still been in business doing it? Maybe. But I think connecting the dots looking backwards is always easier. But I think at that moment, there were just a lot of things going on, right? I was just unhappy. I was worried where retail was going, what that was going to do to my business, that stress, that anxious, that anxiety. I wasn't strong enough and secure in myself to make that pivot and go all in on a different avenue. Right. So I think there's a lot of things going on there now that I look back, but at the same time, it was more of, yes, I like helping other people. There were certain areas of the business I didn't like and wanted out of. And there were certain moments where I just felt more passionate. And I believe, as much as I just said, you can't go all in on a passion without any business sense or understanding how to grow a business, because passion doesn't put food on your plate. But at the same time, I look back at it and say, yes, it was a lack of passion. It was a lack of a lot of other different things, but I think your happiness matters. And I was way happier helping other people than I was working on that brand. And that was the motivating factor for me.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think part of it probably to do with where you saw the direction, where we get passionate and we love things that are doing well and that we see a bright future in, partly, as I think I kind of heard I think about myself and also what you described. and just the amount of effort and work it was going to take to pivot, not necessarily even to grow, right, but just to survive. And so that kind of ties in with the fact that you also like helping, and we're obviously really good at branding
and you have to be self-aware, right? Like you have to be self-aware enough to make those decisions. It was a hard decision, an unpopular decision, again, starting from scratch, just got married, closing down something that I built. A lot of people look at your business as like a baby. I've never looked at it like that. My business is not my baby. I'd sell my business tomorrow. I have two beautiful kids. Some days I consider selling them, but for most of the time, there's no amount of money in the world that I would sell them for. I'm not emotionally attached to my business. For me, it was an easy decision. I get why it's hard for other people.
Yeah.
I think that's always been a strength of mine. My gut has always been really strong and has rarely misguided me, and I'm pretty self-aware.
Good deal. Well, you've talked a little bit about Facebook ads early on, and how would you describe social media playing a role in entrepreneurship for you?
I mean, monumental, right? I built an agency on the back of Facebook ads. I think if you're a business trying to scale in 2022 and beyond, and even earlier than this, but we're recording this in 2022, talking about this, it's impossible. I mean, you have like, social media is where everyone congregates. It's the water cooler of the world. So by you not being on there, could you grow a business without ever having a social media presence? Sure. Are you leaving a lot of money on the table by not having one? 100%.
And where you've already mentioned Facebook, were there any others that were key drivers, or that are key drivers for growth and sales for either your past businesses or current clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're in e-commerce, Facebook and Instagram are huge. Then comes probably, take away Google for a second. Then you probably have TikTok, because we're going like direct response. TikTok is probably your next best avenue. I think Google is important. I think if you're in the service business, you can't ignore Google. You can't ignore Facebook. YouTube has been a huge factor. I think everyone wants to go channel diversification and omni-channel, but very few brands could actually do it. I think if you were going to look at it and sit there and say, okay, where's my audience? Who am I going after? And go all in on that one platform, maximize as much as you can before you start diversifying your money.
And typically, is that Facebook/Instagram, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily, but there's no advertising platform that's better than Facebook and Instagram. And they're going through problems, and we don't have to get specific into those problems. And if you're a business owner and you're advertising on these platforms, there are problems, but still there's no platform that's better than this right now.
Right. They have a lot of users, right? Like multiple billions. So there's just probably not
it's just your job as a business owner is to get in front of people. So
it allows
numbers matter.
Right.
Yeah.
So shifting gears, what are some misconceptions that people might have about being an entrepreneur? What are things that people might think that might be wrong, that they don't know?
Rovox, where fashion meets fitness.
I don't know about you, but I don't party on a yacht every second week. I don't fly private every time I fly. But in all seriousness, the real misconception is that it's a little bit of a push-pull, and I'm going to explain this in a second. But one myth is that they believe business is hard, and another myth is that they believe business is easy. Business doesn't have to be as hard as people make it out to be. It could be easier. There are things that you could do to make things easier for you as a business. So I learned from a clothing side of things. But the people who jump into entrepreneurship think it's going to be easy, when you have to look at the numbers, right? Only 1 out of 10 businesses succeed. Less than that hit $1 million in sales, even less than that hit $5 million in sales. And as you go up, those numbers stagger, and everyone wants to make $1 million. Everyone wants to make $100 million. And they want the next Amazon. They want to be the next billion. Right? Very, very few people on the planet do it. It's like me saying, I'm going to go play in the NBA, right? The odds are kind of, I think I have a better odd in business, but like the odds of me being the best playing, you have to be realistic a little bit. So I think entrepreneurship's been romanticized. I don't think people get how lonely the journey could be. And it's very isolating at times. And there's very few people, unless you're talking to other entrepreneurs who understand the things you're going through. The highs are super high. The lows are very low. That's why entrepreneurship has one of the highest suicide rates of any industry. It's just, the market doesn't care how you think. In any other business, right? You have a boss or whatever. Here, your parents telling you, your mom telling you, it's a great idea, go start it, honey. Or your best friend telling you, yes, that's a great idea for a business. Then you go out and everyone's telling you, but none of those people are your customers. They're not buying from you. And then no one buys from you. It's a very, very humbling experience. The rejection is high. And I don't think people have the stomach for it. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to entrepreneurship, but I think those are the main ones. I'm just wired that way, right? I can't be an employee. Sometimes, some days I wish I was, but I know a lot of entrepreneurs who would be better off financially, mentally, spiritually, physically, if they took jobs for other people versus, staying because they want to be their own boss.
That's interesting. Yeah, that we think about people maybe who could be entrepreneurs who aren't. But what you just kind of pointed out is people who are entrepreneurs who maybe shouldn't be. Like they're excited about it or they're in love with the dream of it, but maybe it's not really what's best for them. Like you said, financially, spiritually, like not just financially either, physically. So shifting gears for a minute, physically, what, with the stress and work of running a couple different businesses, what do you do to maintain a healthy lifestyle? How do you keep things on track?
I don't think I'm the poster boy for it right now, but I try. I do once a year or twice a year. Andy Frisella, I don't know if you know who he is, the 75 hard, which is a big challenge. It's if you're an entrepreneur, you should look this up because from a physical, mental, it's just an amazing challenge. I have a wife who takes care of me food wise and makes sure I'm eating healthy and tries to push me to work out as much as possible. But I'm guilty of my days being overly planned, like just a mess. That's why I hired an assistant in the first place. My days were just a scatter, and I was like, "You're in charge of my calendar. Here's where I need you to block off." To the point where I had to have lunch blocked off on my calendar. I was just like either grabbing something or eating at my desk, but I had lunch put on the calendar. And then you slowly learn how to build a business that operates without you a little bit, and you get some more time back. But I have like two little kids, a 3-year-old and an almost 20-month-old. I think carrying them around is for 4 hours a day, really kind of, it's good weight workout.
Yeah, it is. So if you look ahead
I could be doing much better and I should do better. Because I'm a big believer, if you feel good as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, it's crucial. I operate at my best when I felt my best.
Just to try to give you a little bit of encouragement, I guess, I ran cross country and track in high school. And I kept, I will say, in shape over the subsequent, number of years, 20 plus years, but got back into running with my kids who are roughly 10 years older than what you just, my daughter's 14 and my son is 11. So about 10 years. And as they got old enough to get into for my daughter into 7th grade sports, I started training with her for about the year beforehand, which was basically running several times a week and eventually every day. And so that's been a lot of fun.
And must be great bonding too.
It really is. So they really, they've become good athletes. We spend time together. I'm now the assistant coach for their cross country and track teams. And it's been fantastic. And I feel it's a commitment each day. I mean, it's a literal time commitment, but it's become a priority and I really enjoy it, physically and mentally. And it is a good way to also, like you said, kind of bond. And I think it's good for them then, right, to invest in them. So your kids are really young right now, like really a little too young probably to be doing this, but it's something to plant a seed for maybe as you.
I love that idea.
And so,
yeah, look, my wife tells me all the time, right? She's my driving force of in my head, and she'll win the battle eventually. I will get back to it. But yeah, I can make it. They're all anything I tell you right now is an excuse. I have the time, I have the capacity to go do it. So anything I tell you is an excuse.
So just a little bit of encouragement there, and we'll let your wife's prodding and just time get you in that right place, basically. As we look forward to the future, say 5 to 10 years out, where do you see things going from here?
I've always had trouble with those questions my whole life. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you want in 5 years? I'm a person that marches to the beat of my own drum. That's always been, since I was a young person in grade school. I've always done what I wanted to do, and kind of didn't really care what other people thought about it. And so it's a tough question, because I think I'll pivot however I need to be. Do I see myself running an agency in 5 years? Sure. If that's what, I still love doing, and that's what, I'm still passionate about, and things are going great. Sure. If another opportunity comes my way, then I'm open to that as well. Right. Everything I do, I love the game of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I love the journey. So whatever comes my way, I'm always willing to listen. Doesn't mean I'll act on everything, but I'm always willing to listen. Like right now, I'm getting very heavy into learning about different wealth creation and investing, and even NFTs. And I haven't bought an NFT yet, but I'm spending a lot of time learning about all the different ways that I could protect myself. At the end of the day, everything I do is for myself and for my family, in order to build a life that we want, and continue to give them a life that they deserve, and that I want, and that I frankly desire. So everything I do is with that in mind. So where do I see myself in 5 years? Hopefully 20 years ahead of where I want to be, because I don't believe in the years. I think I buy time. I hire coaches. I hire different things that will allow me to speed up the rate of my return, or the rate of my business. So 5 years hopefully should net me 20 years.
That's that's neat. That's a good goal. Are there any questions that I haven't asked today that you wish I would have asked?
No, I think, just if you're a business owner listening to this, know your numbers. That's the most important thing in your business. Know your numbers, and know your growth levers, and how you could pull them. And you don't have to go all in on certain things. Learn the power of compounding. I think that's one lesson I learned in investing right now, and all my learnings from investing that I brought into business, that little incremental improvements that have huge compounding effects to your business.
Yeah, I know. I've seen something like, if you can improve 1% a day, I mean, imagine where that leaves you in, a year, basically, right? But you don't have to.
Well, I talk about this. You have 5 key areas of your business, right? Like growth. I call them growth levers. That's awareness, lead generation, conversion, your pricing, and your buying frequency. If you doubled every single one of those things, you 32x your business.
Yeah.
And if you get 10% better, you double your business. So, I mean, everyone could get 10% better in certain areas of their business.
Right. And double is is big growth for almost all businesses, basically. So
yeah. And that's what, like, people think you have to like really go nuts. No, you just have to make small little tweaks across those 5 levers, and they compound year over year over year. You just get incrementally better, incrementally better, incrementally better. And that's how billion-dollar businesses are built.
That's really helpful. A good way to think about it. I think that's helpful for business owners to not be overwhelmed by, gosh, how do I get from here to 1 million, here to 10 million, here to 1 billion, right? Like, think about the 10% across the 5 levers, and that gets you to double, and et cetera. Tell us how our audience can find more about your agency and or your coaching program.
Yeah, so everything's on my website, jportnoy.com. And you can find me on social media at Jason Portnoy, almost every single channel. Message me. I'm super accessible. I love talking to people. I love helping people. So just feel free to just slide right into my DMs, as they say, and ask me any question you have. Tell me you heard me on the podcast. If you hated the podcast, or you hated what I had to say, tell me. I love hearing that too. But if you like what I have to say, and you have any questions, please, it'll be a pleasure to chat with you.
Cool. Well, Jason, it's been so nice to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Really appreciate you having me, and keep doing what you're doing. You're sounds like you're a great entrepreneur and a great dad. Something that I'm looking to keep being.
Well, thanks. It's been a lot of fun today. I'm Brian Semling, and this is the Fit for Success podcast.